Choice is often described as freedom, but psychologically, freedom is not always experienced as relief. In reality, choice often arrives with weight, with pressure, with a quiet fear of making the wrong move. When options are limited, the mind rests. When options expand, the mind tightens. At first, the brain tries to be logical. It compares outcomes. It imagines futures that have not happened yet. It simulates regret before any mistake is made. This process feels responsible, but it is costly because the brain is not designed to hold endless hypothetical futures at once. Every imagined outcome drains mental energy, and the more important the decision feels, career, relationships, identity, the heavier the load becomes. What looks like indecision is often misunderstood. It is not laziness. It is not weakness. It is the mind trying to protect the self from irreversible loss. So instead of moving forward, the mind pauses. It delays. It waits for certainty that never arrives. And slowly, waiting becomes its own form of suffering. When two options appear similar, something unusual happens in the brain. Logic loses its advantage. Neither option feels clearly better. Neither feels safe enough to justify commitment. So the mind begins to loop. What if I choose this and regret it? What if the other path was better? What if I ruined something that could have worked? This is not neutral thinking. It produces tension, restlessness, a subtle but persistent anxiety. Psychologically, the brain prefers clarity over perfection. Even a flawed decision gives the nervous system something solid to adapt to. But modern life offers choices that are almost equal. Jobs with similar benefits, relationships with similar risks, paths that look different but feel equally uncertain. And because sacrifice is unavoidable, the mind hesitates. Choosing one option means abandoning another version of life, and the brain experiences that abandonment as loss. So instead of choosing, it freezes, not because nothing matters, but because too much does. Many people believe that delaying a decision keeps them safe. Psychologically, the opposite is true. Avoidance does not reduce pressure. It spreads it over time. When a decision remains unresolved, the mind never fully rests. It stays alert. It keeps returning to the same question, often without conscious intention. This constant background tension slowly drains emotional energy. People often say they feel tired for no reason, but the reason exists. It is unresolved responsibility. Avoidance often disguises itself as caution, as patience, as waiting for the right moment. But beneath it is fear. Fear of consequences, fear of judgment, fear of discovering that the self was wrong. And here is the deeper cost. Every postponed decision subtly teaches a mind that it cannot be trusted to handle outcomes. Over time, confidence erodes. Even small choices begin to feel heavy. And life starts to feel overwhelming, not because it is too complex, but because nothing ever feels concluded. There is a moment, often quiet and uncelebrated, when commitment brings relief, not excitement, not confidence, just relief. And that relief matters more than people realize. Before a decision is made, the mind lives in fragments. Attention is split. Energy leaks into imagined futures that never arrive. The brain keeps scanning. What if this fails? What if the other option was better? What if I regret this for the rest of my life? This mental noise feels productive, but it isn't. It is simply the nervous system stuck in vigilance mode. Once a decision is made, Something subtle shifts. The mind no longer needs to simulate every possible outcome. It can finally stop rehearsing catastrophe. That is why commitment feels calming, even when the choice itself is difficult. Psychologically, certainty is less important than closure. The human brain tolerates mistakes better than ambiguity. Failure has edges. Uncertainty does not. Failure allows learning. Ambiguity only drains. This is why people often feel lighter after making a hard choice, even before seeing results. Commitment collapses infinite possibilities into one path, and with that collapse comes focus. Regret may still appear later. Doubt may resurface. But those emotions are localized. They come and go. Unresolved choice, by contrast, lingers everywhere. In sleep, in mood, in attention. Decisive people are often mistaken for confident people. But confidence is not the cause. It is a consequence. They trust themselves not because outcomes are guaranteed, but because they accept responsibility for whatever happens next. That acceptance restores a sense of control. And psychologically, control does not mean dominance. It means predictability. When the mind knows where it stands, it can finally rest. Perfection is one of the most convincing illusions of the mind. It presents itself as wisdom, as patience, as high standards. But psychologically, perfection is often just fear wearing a rational mask. The idea that a best possible choice exists keeps people suspended between options, because no real option can compete with a future that exists only in imagination. Imagined futures never disappoint. Reality always does, at least a little. This is why people hesitate, not because they don't care, but because they care too much about avoiding regret. Yet regret is not caused by choosing poorly. It is caused by believing that regret can be eliminated. Every meaningful choice contains loss. Loss of alternatives. Loss of imagined selves. Loss of paths never taken. Mature decision-making begins with accepting this loss. When people stop chasing the perfect option, pressure decreases. Energy returns. Action becomes possible again. Reality, unlike fantasy, responds to effort. An imperfect choice can grow. A delayed choice cannot. What matters is not starting with the best option, but staying long enough to shape it. Psychologically healthy people do not avoid regret. They contextualize it. They understand that regret does not mean failure. It means involvement. In the end, peace does not come from making flawless decisions. It comes from choosing, accepting uncertainty, and investing fully in the path that remains. Freedom is not infinite choice. Freedom is commitment without self-betrayal. And the mind finds stability not when every option stays open, but when one direction becomes real.